Professor Armstrong, we are using gas, naphtha, and other feedstocks for fertilizer. We're using them for petrochemical, and there is an extremely high level of inadequacy on that part. So both from sourcing them and from the perspective of technology development on using them as feedstocks for others, and in general, your hope about India managing to do this. It would be great to have your word.
Well, of course, I actually think and many in the hydrocarbon, the petroleum industry feel like it's a shame to burn hydrocarbons because they're so valuable as a feedstock, right? There are lots of things you can burn for power, but not so many things you can use as feedstocks for the chemicals, plastics, and so on industry. So lots of very high value added materials that you would like to make from those feedstocks. Chemicals is a rare industry in the sense that it uses hydrocarbon molecules both as a feedstock and as an energy source in the production process. So it's an industry that cares deeply on both sides of that. So should I segue into a bigger picture here? So yeah, so let me talk a little bit about the topic of the panel on the future of energy and hydrocarbons and beyond. I'll use as a takeoff the point that's come out now a couple of times in the previous panel at the end in Mr. Perthes' closing comments, and also just a moment ago, Mr. Doshi made the point that transitions in energy take a long time. Historically, coal to oil is a 60, 70-year transition. I think we're honest, we'll say none of us have a crystal ball that's all that good for a 60, 70-year horizon. So I think one of the really important challenges we have as a group of people, either from government who invested in energy, from the energy industry itself, from academia, one of our jobs is to develop options for the future. So that we have a suite of technologies that we might draw on as we get 20, 30, 40 years down the horizon, and it becomes clearer what in fact the environmental limitations might be, what international trade looks like in various commodity energy sources, what technologies are available for exploiting those technologies and converting them. So I think that's an important piece of what we need to be doing collectively is this business of option development. I think all too often we want to lock into an answer, right? And it's comforting to say this is the answer and just make it happen. But it puts us in a bind for the long-term future. Second point I'd like to make is that while we're developing these long-term options, we need to be sure to work on making today's energy systems as efficient as we can and as environmentally responsible as we can. Been a lot of talk about that during this conference. There's clearly a lot that's going on, but a lot more that we can do, and I think that's an important role for all of us. Some issues I think that will impact our ability to make headway. I think I'd like to emphasize the importance of collaboration across sectors. Collaboration across government, academic, and industry is a key, I think, to making headway in the energy business. The government, the public plays a very key role, particularly in early stage research and development. You're too far away from the market, from being able to realize and capture profits from your investments in research. But if that research doesn't get done, then we don't have the new knowledge, new discoveries that lay the foundation for subsequent technologies. Academia is a great incubator for new ideas. We have this wonderful resource of students who are forever telling faculty that they're wrong and challenging old ideas. It's a great place to work collectively with industry. to develop new ideas, but to keep those ideas focused on the marketplace down the road and what might be picked up and useful for industries. So that collaboration can lead to early stage research, innovation in applied technologies, and ultimately to commercialization. Wrote a book recently with George Schultz called Game Changers. The idea of that book was to tell a story for policymakers in Washington about how this partnership between the government in the basic research stage, industry, and academia can lead to improvement in the economy, improvement in security, and improvement in the environment. Among the stories we tell there that show the success, one that's been alluded to a number of times at the conference and already on this panel is shale. Shale gas is a story where the technology development begins at the beginning of the Cold War. Actually, some of the very early 3D imaging technology was financed by the Department of Defense in the U.S. for tracking Soviet subs as they entered the North Atlantic. Subsequent DOE research funded looking at fracking technologies, horizontal drilling technologies, played a key role, but clearly is insufficient. What it took was industry seeing the opportunity and driving the transition of that research, basic research technology into commercial application. And that took many years of dedicated people pounding on opportunity. Other areas where there's clearly opportunity been demonstrated, storage is a key enabler as we go forward for bringing intermittent renewables onto the grid. As part of the MIT Energy Initiative, we're funded probably 2/3 by industry. They do some collective funding of seed funds to try out brand new ideas in energy. One of the ideas from the faculty 8 years ago when we were just starting was to look at some novel battery technology that might be essential for grid scale storage. The idea was to use a liquid metal battery inspired by aluminum smelters, but designed so you could run it reversible. You could suck in large amounts of current, large amounts of current. So that started with an idea funded by a consortium of industry, just trying out the basic idea. It transitioned into a research program that was funded partly by the government in the U.S., ARPA-E, and also by one of the mighty sponsors, Total, who saw this as an important technology going forward. It has since launched as a startup company called Ambry. That's Cambridge without the C and some of the end of the word tacked on. And has received funding from Total and other investors. So again, another example of bringing academia together with government and industry to make a difference. Last point, there are lots of stories you can tell like that. It's not a unique story. The last point I'd like to make is that as we look forward to the energy future, we also need to think about system issues. We talked a lot about very specific technologies, but we have to keep in mind that energy is a system. Two examples there. One is the penetration of intermittent renewables onto the grid. That has produced some interesting and not always pleasant surprises. I'll look at Jeffrey, because in Colorado there's a mandate to put more wind in. There is a lot of wind now in Colorado. But they've had the experience of having to cycle coal-fired power plants because of excess wind at certain times of day. And that can have the undesired consequence of actually putting out more emissions than if you hadn't used the wind at all, because CO2 doesn't cycle terribly well. Second system issue that I think we're all aware of critically is the coupling of energy systems with water systems, with land systems, and with food systems. And the need to think about, on a simple level, the need for water to produce energy, to make power, but also the use of energy to make clean water. as simple examples. So there are lots of system issues there that I think we need to keep in mind as we develop towards the future to avoid so-called unintended consequences.